If you've not heard of DC's Vertigo imprint, you are in for some great reading. These are the videos I'm so excited to do because it's me sharing my favorite publishers' books, reading material with all of you, maybe giving you a little education, maybe teaching you a few cool things. But yes, I'm here to talk about one of my favorite publishers, that is Vertigo. It's an imprint underneath the DC brand logo, and it's getting a relaunch. So I thought it was a perfect time to kind of dive into a little bit of the history, show you some of my favorite books in that world. Uh, Welcome to John's Comics with Kids. Hit the subscribe, hit the like, join the channel if you want. There's a lot of regular content happening here, and it's usually in and around my favorite things to be reading. Right now, let's talk about Vertigo, which is a fun history. Karen Berger, one of the great editor publisher workers in the industry of comic books, was there at the birth of Vertigo Comics, which sort of came out of a time at DC when they had some real great creators with some unusual dark kind of visions happening in and around their publishing brand. So they had books like Hellblazer with John Constantine and Sandman, right? And they had Swamp Thing, and these were some darker, more maybe adult reading, not so easily devoured by children necessarily. And they wanted to kind of cultivate a brand around it. They were seeing a popularity with these books because the creators were so original, the work was so groundbreaking, everything was so exciting. So they launched DC Vertigo. And several of these titles that I mentioned, you can even see the brand change because they had been going pretty strong at that point. So here is, I mentioned Sandman, issue 46, I think it is, with the DC logo and everything. And at this point, they'd even had some, cameos from DC heroes, you little characters here and there that we already knew, right? And then, of course, it was not long after that we got the Vertigo DC logo for issue 47. And this was part of that transition from one into the other. And it happened with a lot of books. Here's Animal Man's first DC Vertigo logo cover. And this was issue, 50 something. So, same kind of thing going on there. We had John Constantine, Hellblazer, going through his birth into the Vertigo logo. Of course, Sandman, or Swamp Thing that we mentioned earlier, same deal. And let's see what else we got. We got, yes, here's Doom Patrol. I've totally forgot to mention Doom Patrol. So a lot of those company brand names, those titles that were still DC superhero related, they were interconnected in that universe, but they wanted their own, umbrella company. And as that happened, they realized that they could branch out into things that were not connected to the DC universe. They didn't need a Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman connection, right? They could have their own identity. The first book actually published under Vertigo's brand was Death: The High Cost of Living, which is a great mini series involving the character of Death. Obviously, we all know Neil Gaiman is persona non grata, like several writers in this era who apparently were doing some shady things on the side, but we'll try to let the work stand on its own, especially considering there are so many really talented, great writers in this era that should not be forgotten. I recently, for the first time, finished reading Sandman and really was impressed by it. The artists did such a phenomenal job. The universe is so rich and vibrant. I can see why it really brought people into the medium of comics, made new fans out of people. And I wouldn't want to dismiss the work it did as a title, bringing those people in the same way Swamp Thing. And I know that my friend Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart had a big love for the character of Swamp Thing and what Alan Moore was doing in that universe, right? And that bled into the Vertigo era when we started getting a ton of really new, groundbreaking original titles like V for Vendetta from him as well, right? These books that really made an impact on the medium. Watchmen, I want to say, was prior to this, but is now often republished using the Vertigo logo as its brand because it was like a lot of these titles moved, from DC plain and proper over to the Vertigo brand where it was allowed to be a little edgier. And if you figured it out, this was kind of the birth way, way, way long ago of what became now the Black Label. And then as Vertigo is coming back as a new title for DC, I get the feeling that those Black Label books might be sort of middle ground. The black label is now Vertigo, right? So there's lots of great books in this era that I think people may have forgotten. Writers and artists that came out of this era and did so many other things as well. And so I've culled together a few that I want to mention. I've got my top three right here. But there's a couple others, a couple of honorable mentions that I want to throw out to you. First off, we got DMZ. This was a really interesting series that Brian Wood wrote and Riccardo Bercinelli drew, and it had to do with civil war in the United States and the front line being New York City and a section of New York City that was off limits, and a reporter who goes behind the lines to try to see what the truth is. If you feel like this is relatable, yeah, it is incredibly relatable. And it was a really great series. I can't remember the number of trades that it ran. I think I've read almost all of them, if not the entirety, and really was impressed by it. I would love to do a reread at some point. I was reading so much Vertigo at this time, but it was a title that really stuck with me in the same way that, like, Transmetropolitan at the same time. I read some of those by Warren Ellis, I believe. Felt too real. There was a lot of like examinations of the media and truth and knowledge and what's being held secret from you by the government. And a lot of that stuff is in DMZ and Transmetropolitan. But I just, for whatever reason, DMZ connected with me more. Transmetropolitan is a little more wild and over the top, maybe more Judge Dredd like, but DMZ I thought hit more to my heartstrings. I also want to mention Jason Aaron did a phenomenal book called Scalped, and I want to say this one ran for about 6 trade paperbacks, something like that, and it had to do with a Native American man comes back to the tribal lands after getting out of jail and gets involved with the casino business and some of the shady doings. It's a classic noir like you would expect from Jason Aaron, and really great character work, really great story, and really a whole lot of good drama. And that series was another great Vertigo run. Okay. And that leaves me to my top three. And for those of you that have watched me on JP Budget Collecting or watched me on this channel, you probably already know my top three because we've talked about them so much. Number three is 100 Bullets. I know some people not a big Brian Azzarello fan, and he comes and goes with me, but I love him when he's doing noir, and this is his noir masterpiece. I had a lot of fun all the way to the end. There are 13 trade paperbacks, some of them really tiny, some of them absolutely massive, and all of them doing a great job with those classic film noir or noir story tropes. And I really do appreciate the way he captures the drama in and around crime and crime stories. So yeah, 100 Bullets, that was one of the books that got me back into reading comics just before my kids were born, right around the time that I got married, and I had been away from comics through college, right? Next up, we've got Why the Last Man, Brian K. Vaughan, Pia Guerrera doing a great job. This is a really great series, much shorter than 100 Bullets. I think it's something like 7 or 8 trade paperbacks. Really powerful look at science fiction, right? What happens when all the men on Earth, anything with a Y chromosome, passes away except for one guy and his monkey. What happened? Why did it happen? And what will happen next? A really, really good sci-fi story. And I love me some Brian K. Vaughan, and he just crushed it. This is obviously way before Saga, and some people found him that way. But give it a shot if you haven't. The TV series was middling, but the comic stays strong. Lastly, it's Fables for me. I really did enjoy this series from beginning to end. It's now back. I guess they did a limited series again recently, but Fables has been a comic that I've gone back to and reread several times. It's just got a lot of really great characters, ideas, drama, excitement, action, twists. It's got all the things you want from a good story. It has to do with the fairy tales from all of our wonderful childhood's memories are alive and well and hiding out in New York because an adversary is coming to destroy them. And they're trying to like blend in and act like they're just an average New Yorker, but their pasts are coming back to haunt them. So it's a really fun series. The first volume, Legends in Exile, has to do primarily with a murder and a detective trying to solve the case. So Lots of good noir tropes as there in there as well. So those are my top three. But let me know from you. Did I skip over your favorite Vertigo series? Have you heard of Vertigo before, or is this all new information? If you haven't, I highly recommend doing a little research or go to a comic shop and see what they've got from their Vertigo section, because I promise you, you will not be disappointed. There's some great reading ahead of you. Thank you to my channel members. These are the people that keep the lights on, do awesome by just supporting me, making these channel videos possible. And I give away a box of books to them every month. Somebody in that group wins every single month. You can win too. Just join the channel and you got the shot at winning something fun, usually some variants and a trade paperback. I appreciate everybody coming by. Let me know about your favorite videos from Vertigo books, and I'll see you again soon.